the task so that we know after we've done all of our research and preparation in that regard, we'll be able to then see, okay, which of that information that I've just studied am I going to use in this task? Because you will have done a lot more work than for what you actually need to write this task. So, first of all, let's have a look at the quote and then we'll go down to what the task is. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. Romans. Okay. Now, our task. To what extent does this statement reflect how the characteristics of religion interact to make Christianity a dynamic, living tradition? Okay, let's break it up. First of all, we need our key verb. To what extent? So if we're looking at our key verb there, to what extent, that's saying that we need to make a judgment here. So we have to say how much this statement reflects the characteristics of religion. So we can't just say that it does, we've got to say how much does it. Now let's have a look at what the content of this statement reflects, how the characteristics of religion, that's our content. That's the majority of what we're going to be talking about. That's where we're going to get the meat of our essay from. Those characteristics of religion are your principal beliefs, your core ethical teachings, and your sacred texts. You have already done the preparation work for that. Now we've got to say to what extent these characteristics do something. Let's go back and see what it's asking us to use these for. So now we need to find out what the qualifying piece of information is in this. How does this statement reflect? So this statement is a qualifying piece of information. This statement. So we have to use this statement. What's another qualifying piece of information? Reflect how the characteristics of religion interact. So in our response, we're going to have to show how they interact. And that was the video that we were saying, making the links, how they're not independent but interdependent. What's another qualifying piece of information that we need to talk about? To make Christianity a dynamic living tradition. All right, so we need to be able to show this dynamic living tradition. That's how we show that it's still in existence after 2,000 years. It's got over 2 billion followers around the world, and that it's more than just Catholicism. It's Protestantism, it's orthodoxy as well. Now, what aspects of this quote are we going to be able to use, and think about where does it fit in the principal beliefs, core ethical teachings, or sacred texts? Well, straight away, all things. So we're talking about everything that has been created. Work together. There's our interaction. Working together. So we need to show how they're interdependent for good. Loving the Lord your God with all your soul and all your might is pretty good. For those who love God, there's straight away that link to what I just said there. So when your response, make sure you refer to these, because it says, how does this statement, you've got to show how this statement reflects. For those. So we could say there that it's not just for the Jews or a sect of Judaism, but for anyone who loves God. What a great position those peasants and farmers and people who weren't followers of, who weren't Jews, for them, that they could receive God's grace and therefore be saved through Jesus Christ. For anyone who loves God, who are called according to his purpose. What is his purpose? His purpose is to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and saved and loved by him, because we're all created in the image and likeness of God. Because we're all one in the image and likeness of God, because we are, if I look back to some of our other notes, we're part of the church as the body of Christ. So we need to be able to use aspects of this quote to say to what extent it reflects the characteristics of the tradition. So we need to be able to make links. So all things is another. We know. So what do we know? We know the principal beliefs and if followers of Christ. follow those principal beliefs and follow the core ethical teachings that they get from their sacred texts, it reflects that. This statement reflects it pretty well. So we need to be able to show how well it does that. Another thing that we need to look for in the question here is that characteristic. So that is a bossy. It tells us we need to talk about more than one characteristics of tradition, principal beliefs, teachings, sacred texts. So we need to be able to talk about those in plural. So more than just one example of principal beliefs, more than just one example of core teachings, more than just one example of the sacred text. So that we need to be able to do all of these things in our 1200 words that we write. So a plan for this now is really important.